Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Donald Jones, co-founder and chairman, WLSA, Vice President of Global Strategy and Market Development, Qualcomm Life.
Good afternoon, and thank you for all being here. It's been great. When I founded this organization with Rob and 8 years ago, the challenge obviously was talking about what possibly could be done, and today that's no longer obviously the challenge. I wear a number of hats. I'm chairman of this organization. I run global strategy and market development at Qualcomm and in our wireless health group, Qualcomm Life, which you heard Rick Valencia talk about earlier. But I wanted to talk just a moment before we get started about what I'm most enthusiastic about right now, and that's a new effort that we've created in conjunction with the Scripps Translational Science Institute called Scripps Digital Medicine. And that is a center for designing, running, recruiting, and publishing clinical trials focused on the efficacy of digital medicine solutions. So we've got about a dozen trials that have either been completed or that are currently in place or about to be run, and they run the gambit of solutions from very straightforward solutions to nanosensors that are placed in circulating blood and are powered by lasers through the skin. So we do a little bit of everything. You're going to hear a lot more about this center. It's going to be very, very important after people get through their FDA clearances and their products are commercial to actually do clinical efficacy research to show why and how their products and devices actually excel in the market and are better than what else is in the market. And this is all about bringing things to market faster. I'd encourage any of you who have not already read one of my partners in this effort's endeavors, that's Dr. Eric Topol's book, The Creative Destruction of Medicine. I think it's a great textbook for this space, and if you haven't picked it up, I very highly encourage you. It's the #1 life science book on Amazon and has been in that place since it came out almost a year ago. So I think it's probably the best reference point to understand what the future may look like, written by one of the world's most acknowledged physicians. With that here, we're going to launch into a series talking a little bit about 4 different companies that all have an interesting angle on the consumer and how the consumer is playing, even though the companies have some very kind of traditional places. You're going to hear from companies that are definitely in kind of the wellness fitness space, but also in the electronic medical record space and in the diagnostics space. So with that background, you're going to see a consumer angle, you're going to see some out-of-pocket payments, you're going to see some self-insured employer payments, and other insurers sponsoring these applications. But at the end of the day, you'll see that they all have a common thread with the consumer. And so with that, I'm going to invite my first speaker, Jeremy Johnsey from TicTrac, out to talk to you about his company. Jeremy? I think you brought a video with you, so
we did.
Let's go to the video.
Yeah, let's start with the video and then we can talk.
Okay, great.
Each of us leads our lives in our own way. This is what makes us unique, peculiar, special. Today's technology has empowered us to easily monitor the different aspects of our lives that are important to us, creating more data about ourselves than ever before, and giving us a glimpse into what makes us tick. But making sense of all this data is what really counts. TicTrac lets you bring all this data together from your favorite apps and devices and organizes it into personalized dashboards designed around you. Intuitive tools let you dive deep into your goals, presenting your data in rich, meaningful infographics that let you discover more about yourself, whether it be weight loss, watching your baby grow up, or living each day to the max. TicTrac lets you get more out of life. It's powered to simplify your life by connecting with the apps you already use, letting you manage all your data in one easy place. You'll be amazed at what it can do. It could really change your life.
Jeremy, tell me, what was the origin here? How'd you get here? Why
Right.
does this company exist?
So we really came up with the idea of creating what we're calling a lifestyle design platform, a platform that will allow you to sync any piece of data that you created about yourself across your digital life into one central place. And this ranges from very consumer-focused applications like social media, online shopping, your calendar, the weather, right the way through to medical-grade devices, wireless blood pressure cuffs, a lot of the sensors, and third-party services that we've heard people talking about here over the last few days. Pull all that information into kind of one place and then visualize it. And when you visualize that information, then learning more about yourself based on your data and then acting on it. That was the real premise of the platform.
And talk a little bit about what it takes to get engaged with the platform. I mean, how much work is this? What happens?
Yeah, so it's very simple. We introduce users to the notion of tracking. And so the people who've been adopting it most readily have been people who are sort of qualified selfers and early trackers already. What we've been pushing really hard on is the notion that with the kind of proliferation of smartphone devices and sensors and apps, it's very, very easy to track the majority of your life. So very simply, you go into the TickTrack platform. We've created a user experience around what we call projects, and that's the notion that people live life in different projects. So if you take health, for example, and health goals, you can create a project which could be running your first 5K, it could be losing weight, it could be managing a chronic disease, managing diabetes, and we will introduce you to a number of different tools, so devices, sensors and apps, all manual trackers that you can use to manage that project. As you start inputting that data, we give you insights back based on what we see happening when the data talks to each other.
So, you've set this platform up to allow the consumer to actually almost design their own experience.
Right.
And so, obviously, you've probably had some conversations with people about kind of surprising experiences.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the stories there?
Okay, so I think the best one for myself really was when I was able to integrate my music playlists with my running activity app. So I was able to see actually that I personally run better when I listen to hip hop music versus pop music, and so the notion really was integrating those two data sets gave me an insight that was completely unique to me. And had you done the same thing, you would have come with a completely different insight. So the way I actually built the platform, and the guys, the team that co-founded the business, we're all consumer web guys. So part of the excitement for us kind of being here and being in this environment is we're not health guys. What we understand is how to drive consumer engagement, how to deliver messages and insights to people that will then cause them to take action. So that's really what we've been focusing on with the user experience.
Well, I understand that. I had my son on a product from a company called Convergence, which is a smart Band-Aid patch that measures a number of things. And he happened to have the chance to meet one of the inventors of the technology. And when asked if he liked the product, he said, yes, but I want my data. And of course, being a medical device company, they didn't believe in sharing data back to the actual consumer. But because I happen to know the right people, I managed to get his data. And I asked him, well, what are you going to do with it? And he said, I don't know. But literally 24 hours later, he came back having set his ECG to music.
Brilliant.
So,
absolutely,
yeah,
it's that exact notion. Yeah, that exact notion. So we work as a completely device-agnostic platform. Our whole ethos really is your data is your data. If you want to bring it into our platform, we can help you see how your sleeping data might relate to your exercise data, which might relate to your stress data, which might relate to your working data, and so on and so on and so on. But if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. It's your data.
So I imagine you're going to learn a lot by the relationships that your customers actually create with their own data in ways you might not have even imagined when you put the platform together.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think the notion for us really is that the value comes when an individual learns an insight about themselves. We create a moment where you can build a relationship with that customer, with that individual. So for us, I think when we look at things within a health environment, it's at that moment when a healthcare professional can actually come in and have a conversation with an individual and help them interpret their data. So if you imagine our vision for TickTrack, the way it works really is as a platform that brings in people who generate data, which is all of us. So we generate data every single day with all the things that we do, bring those people into a platform, and then combine them with people who can interpret that data. So experts, whether they're personal trainers, physicians, life coaches, brands, who can come in and go, well, we understand what's just happened to you just then. We're the experts that can interpret that data, so here's what you need to do.
Well, I can imagine a quantified selfer looking at this and going, this is really, really cool. But let's look at all the other players as you go down the road of personal trainers, and then you get into actually healthcare professionals, and you look at all the different kind of people who look at this. What's the reaction?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's exciting for us because we we have a B2C proposition, which people can sign up to now at TickTrack.com, but we also have a big B2B push. So we're kind of working in 5 key industries: the payer community, the provider community, consumer brands, which I mentioned, also large self-insured employers who can use TickTrack as a wellness application, and also professional sports teams and professional athletes. And the whole notion really is discovering data and information about people in a much richer and deeper way, and then kind of acting on that. So yeah, lots of different communities that we can work with.
Do you think this is this is very early, and you did not design this to be a front-end face to the healthcare professional community, but I'm sure you've had some healthcare professionals look at it.
Yep,
What's their reaction?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been very positive, and I think it's because we've come from a perspective where, like I said, we're consumer web guys. So we built a product for the consumer. That's who we focus on. So when we come and meet guys who are incredibly, clinically robust and medically incredibly sound, and they've built products as doctors through the lens of a doctor for a patient, it's dry. And it may not be as engaging, and it may not be as entertaining for an individual to look at that information. So when we hopefully can come and have a conversation and say, look, we have all this lifestyle data with the ability to make it fun and engaging. Let's combine it with all the medical data you have, and let's create a proposition that really engages the consumer and then gets them to move.
It was a very polite way of saying doctors and medical device guys are actually pretty bad human interface designers.
Well, we'll support their UI. We'll help their front end.
What do you think comes next?
So I think for us, we're based in London, and we've been, we're very appreciative of being brought out here by Rob and the team, and we will be pushing very hard into the States. So we have a whole host of consumer brand relationships developing on the East Coast, and then a whole host of kind of medical relationships building here on the West Coast. So I think for us, it's being based over here and finding partners.
So as you look forward in kind of the partnerships that your product needs to affiliate with and can drive, it's pretty clear how some of the devices, the sensors, fit into that partnership, and you can actually help sales because you give relevance in new, meaningful ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
What other kinds of partnerships? Can you be a partner for a food company?
Yeah, very much so. So if you imagine the way that people can take TickTrack, and if people go online and look at TickTrack.com, you'll see our consumer proposition, but we have a whole white label solution. And so the notion behind that is we can create the look and feel of TickTrack to use all of our underlying analytics, all of our technology, all of our data capture, but present it in a way that might make sense to a brand. So one of the most exciting brand partnerships we've been developing has been with Red Bull, and we're actually powering a project called the Red Bull Personal Best Project. Now what that does is it shows 3 of their extreme athletes, so BMX riders, downhill bike riders. And what you can do as a fan is you can go to their dashboard, you can see the way that they train, the way that they sleep, the amount of cans of Red Bull that they drink, where they're competing, and you can drag and drop all these different pieces of data, like you saw in the video, to learn more about the athlete. The extension of that then is actually you can, through third-party apps and services, you can then race the tracks that they raced, and you can do the things that they did, and you can compete against these athletes. Now, the overarching message, and this is why I think it's a slightly different perspective to some of the talks you've heard from people today, is the overarching message actually is just get people healthier by getting them on bikes more, and using high-profile personalities and big brands to drive that message is arguably a very interesting, exciting way to push that.
Now, am I correct that I could use your platform, say, with 5 friends, and we could have a weight competition, and yet we could all have different devices?
Yep.
And we could put our own competition together, and we actually all have different scales, different activity monitors,
Absolutely.
and yet we have a common user interface, a common platform, and we can communicate in a common fashion.
Absolutely. Now that can be done within a B2B environment. So an employer could actually create a challenge for their employees that they could all sign up and they can share and so on. But yeah, we'd very much encourage that. Absolutely.
Well, I think that's fascinating because it kind of democratizes, and folks can figure out what devices they like or they've chosen or they've bought, and they don't want to buy another one, and yet they can all still participate, which is nobody's locked into any particular solution that way.
Yeah, absolutely. We're device agnostic. We're friends with everyone. If that's what you use to track your data, you use that. If I use something different, I use that, and we all get value.
So obviously you're a little bit new to the U.S. market. What's the most exciting thing that you think exists in the U.S. market for you?
I really think it's consumer brands. And I think what we found most exciting is the role that consumer brands can play in the development of healthcare, because they are, within health generally, because they touch consumers every day. They have the ability to influence people day in and day out. And I think when you look at some of the stats that people were talking about over the last few days, where people will engage with their doctor maybe once, twice, 3 times a year when they're ill, the doctor's there to treat you when you're ill. not to help you prevent what you're doing in your lifestyle. And so a consumer brand, I drink the drinks that I drink every day, I eat the foods that I eat every day, I wear the clothes that I wear every day. So how can you leverage that reach and ability that they have to really help drive the health message? And here in America, it's been very well received and very exciting.
Thank you, Jeremy. That's a great introduction.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to just scoot down to the next chair, and I'm going to invite my next guest up, Nat Finley, the CEO of Hello Health, one of my favorite electronic medical record companies.
Hey, Don. Thanks. Hey.
Hi, Nat. How are you?
Well, thanks. Well,
I think you have a few slides. We're going to introduce. We can introduce the folks to Hello Health.
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
Cool.
Have you got your little?
Yep. We'll get you. There we go.
All right. So, and it's the
big green
the
arrow.
big green button. All right. So, Hello Health, as Don mentioned, electronic medical record company. We prefer to call ourselves a health services company, a physicians services company that partners with independent practices to help them move along into the digital world, but most importantly, help them make money. So brief background, based in New York City, 80 employees. We've raised about $40 million. Major investor is the Blue Cross of Chicago, Blue Cross of the US, Blue Cross Investment Fund. And we're here to talk about revenue. That's what we talk to doctors about. We don't say to doctors that you're struggling because you don't have an electronic medical record system. We talk to them about struggling because they don't have electronic medical revenue. And there's a big distinction. And because all of this data is now, of course, digitized, there's a lot of ways to transact with the data. And we ask our practices then, how's your independent practice going? Are you making enough money? And the resounding answer is no. Independent physicians are incredibly troubled by the stability of their revenue. They know that their revenues are declining rapidly, reimbursements are decreasing, et cetera. So they're really feeling the pinch. That $7 urine sample last year is now $6.95 or $6.50. And guess what? The costs are just keep on increasing. Are you getting paid for all the work you do? Do you get paid for referrals? Do you get paid for the time you spend on the telephone with your patients, et cetera? And what's the solution? So the solution really is to then think outside the walls of how you can use your electronic medical record system. And so, of course, these physicians feel that their practices are disappointing, and they know their revenues are decreasing, and this is why they're now fleeing to hospital employment, other types of employment. So our model then, Don and team here, is that we institute new office policies. So our new office policy is that patient registration is now, in fact, we essentially force the patients into putting their credit card on file inside these practices. This has a huge benefit, of course, to the cash flow of the practice, but it automatically enrolls the patient into the Hello Health program, which is a patient portal program. It allows the patient to email the doctor, get their lab results online, schedule appointments with the doctor, have access to their electronic medical record, et cetera. But it adds a significant amount of subscription revenue to the practice. So typically, patient pays $60 a year. We end up with about 1,200 patients in each practice that subscribes. That's $72,000 of additional revenue to the practice. And it all happens here with a little iPad device at the front of the practice. This is actually a practice in Portland, Oregon. The patient puts their credit card on file, is automatically then in this patient portal program. And it's been fascinating. We talk about consumer behavior and what people want to subscribe to in healthcare. But when they're told to subscribe, they will actually subscribe to them. We've spent 3 or 4 years figuring out how to get patients to subscribe. And honestly, Dawn, it's just as simple as instituting a very prescriptive office policy. Now, there are other aspects to the platform, of course, that add revenue to the doctor's life in terms of referrals, et cetera. But today, it's the consumer play I wanted to talk about. So that's the intro to what we're up to.
Perfect. So, this is really interesting. Doctors around the country are struggling to figure out how to come up with the capital to buy their system.
Right.
The federal government's put up a number of money to kind of give them some rebates to help pay for it, but those come after the fact, after they met meaningful use. Mm-hmm. And you've got a system where actually, if they install it, the patients pay the doctor to install an electronic medical record.
Exactly.
It sounds too good to be true.
Yeah, most doctors say that. And so when we host our physicians at these physician dinners, we acquire our doctors a little bit like MD VIP, another physician services company that you're well aware of. And they sit there with their arms crossed. It's too good to be true. But of course, we have one of our successful physicians speak at these dinners, and the lights go on, and they come on board.
You told me a story about a New York doctor who was maybe still testing you, still figuring out whether he wanted to become a member, and said, you should come down and open my mail for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Tell the audience about that story.
Well, that was interesting. So my background, of course, I'm a CPA, and so I spent a week or a few days in this gentleman's practice just looking at the mail, and it was fascinating to see. Well, of course, in a doctor's office, it's incredible that you think the mailman would come with a little deck of letters or stuff. He actually comes with a box of letters every day, and most of our documents coming from the consulting network. So these are the specialists that are sending back the referral notices, et cetera, what's happened. And so I started to think, wow, okay, well, how could you get paid for referrals? And you're accumulating this electronic medical record or the data in the record. Surely there must be a way of charging for the administrative fee of sending that referral. So that was one of the things that we've now about to start launching in Hello Health is the actual ability for the practitioner to set up his referral network and electronically transfer the information amongst his specialists and to get paid for it. The second one, of course, was the life insurance companies that phone up and email and mail with requests for Don Jones's medical record because Don is changing his life insurance policy. And typically physicians are very poor and slow at replying to these requests, and it's a potential huge source of income. And so we've essentially set up another portal that allows them to act as kind of the PayPal for transferring that information. So those were a couple of examples of what I found in the mail. But these all add incredible amounts of additional revenue to the doctor's life.
These make so much logical sense. Doctors must be, after they see these and recognize that they make so much logical sense, must be kicking themselves and say, how come everybody's not doing this?
Yeah. It's interesting, doctors are, if you've seen a doctor, you've met a doctor, but there's a different, unfortunately, they're very, very busy with their day-to-day practice. They're seeing, because of insurance reimbursements decreasing, they're seeing 30 and 40 patients a day on average. It's a huge flow, a churn. So they're really hunkered down in the actual examination rooms, doing their day-to-day business with the patients, and they just don't have the wherewithal to focus on the business development aspects of the practice.
So talk a little bit about your thoughts now on how some of the mobile health devices can integrate with this platform, and what does that mean to the practice? What does that mean to stickiness?
Well, it means a number of things. We've developed an architecture with Qualcomm Life that we've not launched or had the ability to launch yet, just constraints on our side, but we call it Wellbox. And so Dr. Jones, when I visit Dr. Jones, he'll say, well, look, Nat, you're suffering from diabetes, you're a little bit overweight, you've got some issues, you're not active, here's your Wellbox. And the Wellbox contains, of course, the blood pressure cuff, an activity monitor, a wireless scale, et cetera, and you go home with your Wellbox. And now your doctor is actually acting as the AWACS. He's looking after your health. And that data, of course, is then populated directly into the Hello Health platform. So he has a real-time view of not historically that you had health issues, but proactively looking at what health issues you're managing.
And amazingly, you remove the biggest issue, which is I don't get paid to look at this data, and you've already put in place the methodology where the patient is paying for the doctor to look at their communications and data.
Bingo.
So you've problem solved.
We hope, but it's been very successful. I mean, the practices that we're now closing in on a couple hundred practices here in the U.S., and it's a lot of fun at this point. It's very hard to build an intuitive electronic medical record with a practice management system. We've spent, I know this looks like a huge amount of money that we've raised, but when you look at other companies that are in this space, it's an expensive game to play.
We don't have a lot of time here, but I just want to get the point out in case somebody wants to follow up with you. But you've actually looked south and are now selling to doctors in Mexico.
Yeah, thanks you. We actually have our office opened in Mexico City now. We have actually more physicians under contract in Mexico after just a few months of marketing than we do in the U.S. It's just such a much more open market. There are no insurance companies playing in the ambulatory care space, so consumers have a very cash relationship with their physician. They have a respect for their physician that we don't see as much of now in the U.S. And so it's a great territory for us, and very zero competition in terms of electronic medical records. Now the problem that we're actually solving though for the doctors is of course one where the consumer has all the technology. They're Skyping the doctor, emailing the doctor, texting the doctor, and the doctors, they really don't have a system to manage that communication. So we're more of a communications solution as opposed to an electronic medical record solution.
Yeah, they're buying it for that relationship management tool, that
Bingo.
CRM aspect.
Sure.
And by the way, it comes with a EMR attached to it.
Yeah,
somehow.
and they can make some pretty significant money with it as well. So
That's
all good.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nat. Thank you very
Good.
much.
Great.
We're gonna shift gears to another one of my favorite companies, the guy that introduced me to the concept of wireless sex.
Oh.
And when I first talked about Seamus and the company that way, somebody in the audience jumped up and said, "I thought all sex was wireless." But let me introduce Seamus Hashir from Cambridge Temperature Concepts to talk about his company and products.
So I'll just move over.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you. I think many people in the room probably have heard the Duo fertility story. For those of you that haven't, we produce a small wireless sensor that a woman wears under her arm. It monitors her physiology, sends it back to us in Cambridge, UK. We analyze that data to help work out when she's most likely to conceive, and also identify underlying medical conditions that may be preventing conception. So the patient sees that they have this little wireless health device, and in the back of it, to make it all work, you've got a bunch of data processing and a support center there that's supporting that patient while they're not in the doctor's office. What we're looking at and what we're targeting is a huge gap in the market in infertility. You can go down to your Walgreens and buy some tests for maybe $10 or $100, and these things are very effective in the first few months of trying to conceive. And then if you run into a problem, there's this massive gap between what you can get at the pharmacy and what happens clinically. And it's a gap in terms of availability, in terms of performance, but in terms of price, it's really quite stark. You go from paying $100 to paying $15,000, and there's not a lot in the middle. So that's where we position ourselves. Our USPs, there's several of them, pick whichever you like. It's less invasive and more natural. It's clinically very effective, and it's much lower cost. The graph that you see there is our live birth rate, so take-home baby rate, for a woman who's under 40, who's been trying to conceive for less than 4 years, but longer than 1 year. And you can see that after about 6 months of use, Duo fertility, according to our data, is about as effective as a cycle of IVF for that patient group. And after a year, it's about as effective as 2 cycles of IVF. And that's without drugs and minor surgery and all that sort of thing. So we thought, hey, this is something that's pretty good. It's been on market in the UK since 2009. Got our FDA clearance finally beginning of last year, so it came out to all the medical conferences, and I've been learning about the market out here, and I'm hoping a bunch of you guys can help me learn fast as well. I thought I should give you the key lesson that I've learned on entering the US market. It's about the money. So all those other USPs are icing on the cake, but you've got to make this make sense economically for the patient, for the doctor, and the payer. And everything else is really by the by. Having said that, effectiveness gets you a ticket to the table, right? So you have to provide similar effectiveness, otherwise people, don't take you seriously. And so what we have there is a nice little calculation about the chance of getting pregnant for this woman from a cycle of in vitro fertilization, or similarly effective would be 4 cycles of artificial insemination, or 6 months with our product. But once you've taken the effectiveness issue off the table, it's about cost. And so for the patient, this is cheap IVF. For the patient in most of the United States, insurance does not cover fertility treatment, or if it does, it only covers very partially. It might cover some of the drug costs or a couple of the investigations, but not the full process. And so this is mostly an out-of-pocket expense in the US. In some states, fertility is a covered benefit. And in those states, it's not necessarily the patient that's paying this cost and therefore interested, it's the payer that's then interested. Then you've got to talk about that doctor. And for that doctor, it's about reduced medical risk, but reduced medical risk means money. The average obstetrician gynecologist doesn't do high-risk deliveries of babies, which is twins and triplets. That means that they're essentially losing the most lucrative part of that woman's time with them. So talking about the number of multiple births with IVF versus dual fertility is the key message for those doctors, because they're losing out on $5,000 every one of those patients that goes off and has twins or triplets as a result of fertility treatment. Finally, for the payer, it's about the reduced cost per delivery of those babies. So a singlet set of twins, a normal healthy baby, costs about $9,000 to deliver, a bit over twice that if it's twins. Triplets cost a huge amount, and that's because they're often very high risk. They're spending time in incubators and so on. So you can then work out what the average cost per delivery is for in vitro versus dual fertility, and we save $10,000 on average per delivery, even if the insurer is not covering infertility benefits, because that patient is going outside of their system to go and get IVF, and then that payer is suffering the consequences of the cost of those multiple birth deliveries. So these are my big take-home messages that it's taken me a year to go out into the market and discover out here. Everything else that we're talking about health and wellness and how nice this connected health stuff can be, that's all great, but what people really listen to is the economic argument. So you have to be able to turn up with efficacy and a really good economic impact in order to get some traction in the experience I've had so far. So what we're about is having more healthy babies.
Have a seat, Seamus, right here. You've just entered the better, faster, cheaper market, and you have the clinical efficacy to prove it. It's almost a classic test case.
Yeah, you've got better in that it's healthier, a better medical risk, better for mum and baby. Faster is a question mark, because you can go off if you've got the money, and your body could probably put up with 4 cycles of in vitro fertilization in a year, whereas we provide a similar effectiveness to 2 cycles of in vitro fertilization in a year. But the statistics show that on average, once a woman starts trying with in vitro, she's going for 1.7 cycles per year. So we are, in fact, faster than IVF as well, and cheaper. Well, you've just seen that splattered up in big writing there, so we don't have to talk about that.
But even with that said, a woman go out and down the street to Boots and pick up the product and start working on it this afternoon,
Absolutely.
As opposed to making an appointment, seeing the IVF doctor and getting that whole process kicked off.
And in England, a woman has to have been trying for at least 2, typically 3 years before the state will fund in vitro. Whereas she can go and buy this product, as you say, at Boots, the pharmacy chain in England, take it home and be doing the right thing this evening. So consumer access to these healthcare products is important if you are regulated OTC, of course.
And when you launched the product in the UK, you came up with a very unique, might say it was a marketing gimmick, but it turned out to be a pledge to the customer. What was that?
Yeah, it's, I think in the language that's been bandied around here about risk sharing for providers is what you might call it. We offer the product as get pregnant in 12 months or your money back. We had actually quite some success with gaining media exposure and thus awareness and patients. Having come over to the US and talked to a number of doctors, the doctors are very uneasy about this idea of have some health care, and if it doesn't work out for you, get your money back. So we're actually having to remove that claim from the UK because of the pushback from the US doctors. That said, a few of the health plans have been saying, if you're willing to do that with your patients in the UK, and the answer is yeah, come and talk to us, we'll do a deal, as long as we don't piss the doctors off.
So the health plans recognize a good business proposition, even if the docs are a little afraid of it.
I think perhaps what it is what it implies for the rest of healthcare is what maybe they're worrying about.
Well, I think maybe you've got something, I think CMS is figuring this out. They're going to the hospitals and saying, if you're responsible for this patient, if they bounce back in the first 30 days, you get to eat that too. So, we are demanding warranties on our healthcare services now. It's just started, but we are demanding them. So.
And now we have the capacity to actually measure that and measure those outcomes on 100% of patients. One of the really good things about connected health is that you can generally get back this data on 100% of your patients in the field and understand whether or not what you're doing is actually having the impact that you said it would have. So hopefully the days of big pharma jerry-rigging their clinical trials on drugs that have limited applicability when they get out into the field are now over. There's been Ben Goldacre's book is a great example of what has historically gone on. In connected health, we should be able to provide 100% outcome data back to prove that what we're doing works.
Well, you've come into the market with some of the best FSE data. Tell me one or two things that you learned from the OBGYN physicians in Europe when that data came out in terms of how they reacted to that data, given that the gold standard had been IVF.
Extreme skepticism to begin with, particularly from the IVF community. And the best way that we found to deal with that was you would have a question from a notable IVF clinician from the audience. This can't possibly be correct. These patients clearly didn't need IVF. And then you go, oh, so how about we break down the data by the patients who failed IVF at your clinic? And here's our pregnancy rate. And doing that enough times in medical audiences got the message through that actually this is just another treatment option. And you should be able to compare directly for patients who have failed previous treatment options to see whether this works. And that in sort of medical science would be a standard crossover trial to show that. Now in connected health you can just go and look at your patients and see which ones have already had treatment X and then what your outcomes are, as opposed to those patients who have not had treatment X and then what their outcomes are.
I think you taught those doctors a lesson that lawyers are trained early on. That's not, don't ask a question you don't already know the answer to. Thank you very much, Seamus. It's a great story.
Thank you.
I would just ask you to move down while I invite Aaron Rowe, Research Director from Scanadu, to join us.
They didn't tell me how bouncy the stage would be. I'm really impressed. Scanadu was founded about 2.5 years ago, just in Belgium, just before the Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize was first announced. And our company is pursuing the Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize, and in doing so, we're trying to make a diagnostic device that consumers can easily use at home to monitor themselves between doctor's office visits. And this is supposed to be the product that they can reach into a medicine cabinet and pull out if they're concerned that something's wrong with their health. So what you see here is our flagship product, which we call the Scanadu Scout. This is a 3-sensor vital signs monitor. It has a single lead electrocardiogram, an optical sensor, and an infrared thermometer. And this is meant to be held to the forehead for 10 seconds to make all of these readings. And this is meant to be used in concert with our disposable products. So in late 2011, while our electrical engineers were busy working on this project, I was busy wandering the aisles of the drugstore looking for urine tests. This is what I found. So in any CVS or Walgreens, you can find a single-purpose urine test that checks for leukocytes and nitrates, and this will tell you with relatively high sensitivity if you have a urinary tract infection. There are also single-purpose products in the diabetes care aisle that will check you for ketosis or for glucose in your urine. If you shop in the right medical supply catalogs, you can find urinalysis strips that have up to 11 different tests on them. So we went out, we bought some of these strips that have 11 different chemical tests on them, and we started going to work figuring out how easily we could monitor our own urine with these tests. And I'm a chemistry PhD, but I found it really hard to interpret the results of these tests. So for a consumer to interpret them, it'd be very difficult. You dunk one of the strips in your urine, you wait 30 seconds and make a few readings on a few of the tiles on the test strip. Then you wait 40 seconds, and then at the 40-second mark, you have to read a few more. At the 1 minute mark, you read some, and then one is read at the 2 minute mark. And so that's relatively difficult. And then the materials that come with these strips don't make it easy for a consumer to make sense of the product. So we wanted to make something that would allow us to import the results of the urine analysis into our central app. And we wanted to make something that would automatically interpret the results so that it's easy for the consumer and they don't have to do too much thinking. So we're essentially turning a mobile phone into a urine analyzer plus. As several people have done this. We've seen this done at first by Teco Diagnostics, then by the University of Cincinnati, the United States Air Force, UCheck, and a wide variety of other academics have done quickie proofs of concept. Some Scandinavian entrepreneurs have managed to do this. So the actual interpretation of the urinalysis is relatively easy to accomplish. But what we're trying to do is make a product that's remarkably easy to use, and we're trying to communicate to consumers why they would want to use the product. So we're making a complete kit, and this kit includes a paddle, which you see on the right. It has 12 different urinalysis parameters on it, along with a slot for a lateral flow immunoassay, which could contain a pregnancy test, a drugs of abuse test, an infectious disease test. And so in this is the mock-up of our packaging. It walks the user through the process so that just from looking at the box, they have a sense of the sequence of events. We do this to mitigate any of the many mistakes you can make when analyzing your own urine. And we check for these 12 different chemicals. So we're checking for leukocytes and nitrites, which is a sign of urinary tract infection, urobilinogen and bilirubin, which can indicate liver problems or antibiotic use or a myriad of other things. And then ketones, glucose, and pH, which can have some bearing on a person's diet or metabolism. And then microalbumin, creatinine, and protein are tests of kidney function. And so there's a relatively large number of people in the US that are at high risk of kidney problems. We see this product as being something that people with chronic disease, people on medications that can affect the liver and kidneys may be able to use regularly to screen themselves for the problems that can crop up associated with their diseases. Also, there's a relatively large number of people who have urinary tract infections, and pregnant women can monitor several complications of pregnancy through urinalysis. A very large number of pregnant women in the US don't get proper prenatal care, and so this product may allow some of them to monitor themselves at home. We've been testing this product against a Siemens Clinitec Status Plus analyzer. We plan to submit a standard 510K application in July. And so we've been doing thousands of tests within our office, and relatively soon we will have some third-party sites testing our product. The paddles themselves are made in an ISO 1345 certified facility, and we'll submit first for professional use so that the product can be used as directed by a physician, and then we'll go for an over-the-counter clearance once we've done more lay user studies. The potential for this product is really unlocked when you use it in concert with our other products and with patient history. So Scanadu has always been a company that aims to combine information from a really wide variety of sources: optical sensors, acoustic sensors, electronic sensors, along with blood tests, urine tests, gargle tests, and then patient history and epidemiological information. So what this slide illustrates is the idea that if a person feels that they have a urinary tract infection and they use our product and they test positive for leukocytes and nitrites, this may affirm the possibility that they have a urinary tract infection. But if they've indicated to our software that they're a 40-year-old male and that our scout makes a reading indicating that they have a fever, it's possible that that urinary tract infection is worse than a run-of-the-mill urinary tract infection. Perhaps the bacteria have ascended toward the kidneys. And so this is an example of how we could have the fusion of information from patient history, from a disposable in vitro diagnostic product, and from a vital signs monitor to provide the consumer with a much higher level of information than if they were to just use a single-purpose UTI test strip that comes with a little instruction booklet and a color reference chart. And that's what I have to say, so thank you very much.
Thanks, Aaron. We're closing in on time because we got started a little bit late, but I've got one question. Scanadu obviously is not only pursuing the Qualcomm tricorder X Prize, but you're actually making multiple kinds of tricorders here. I mean, at the end of the day, these are multiple devices that are bringing together multiple data sources. And
absolutely, and a point worth mentioning is shame on all of you. When I go to a conference, let's say the World Congress on Biosensors, I've never seen another person from a mobile health company. There's plenty of room in the bargain bin. There are a lot of academic projects for academic sensing projects that are very close to the point at which they could be commercialized. And we don't see a lot of our competitors shopping around for these sorts of technologies.
Yeah,
so we really walk the floor at every trade show we can possibly attend in electronics, in chemistry, to find things that we can integrate into our product line.
well, I told you we would touch on the consumer with every one of these products, and the way I see it is with TickTrack we can get into shape, find the mate, get pregnant, monitor the pregnancy, and go see the doctor, and all have a consumer experience in every step along the way. Please thank my panel here. Thank you.